10, 9, ignition sequence start.
All engines are running.
The clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And as we step onto the lunar surface and swing our golf club, it's time for Kerbalcast episode 37. Not bad for an old man.
It's been a long way, but we're here.
And joining us today are CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
and I am your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin. Coming up in today's program,
Smother me in G-forces and burn me to a crisp. It's our progress in the game.
and should KSP officially leave beta? We have lots of opinions, and they come from your letters. We'll have the latest mission briefing.
After the credits, we look at Apollo 14.
And find out details later in today's program about how you can help support Kerbalcast. All right, before we get started, there's something I have to report.
Okay.
We've had another Kerbal sighting.
Oh,
In the wild.
they're spreading like weeds.
What am I wearing?
You need the same shirt?
Yeah, well,
That shirt?
which one is it? What shirt is it?
Oh, it's the Eye Explosion Kerbal Space Program.
Went to the movies yesterday,
Yeah.
and the guy that was selling me tickets, he went, "Oh, Kerbal Space Program, I love that game." And I was like, "Dude, podcast, give me a hug." And then he ran away.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But that's
wait,
two sightings now.
You're buying tickets from him?
Yeah.
So he's behind that booth and he still ran away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He ran
Protective
away.
glasses
I
is
scared
protecting
him.
him.
I
Yeah.
scared him. Usually it's just women that run away when I try and hug them.
Uh-huh.
But no.
Understandable.
I have expanded my fear base.
Hey, you got to diversify.
Yeah, I have to diversify.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's two sightings now. I've
Yeah.
had two sightings of Kerbalers in the wild.
And as they run away, they spread the news.
That's right. They're
Yeah.
Stay away from him. I said, "There's a podcast. There's a podcast." Well, I'll have to look. So anyway, he's probably listening right now going, "Good Lord, maybe
Oh.
can I sue this guy for defamation of character or
Yeah.
something?" But anyway, I think honestly, I'm going to start wearing Kerbalcast or Kerbal Space Program T-shirts everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
You get to the point you got to start making
Yeah.
them with Sharpies on just white
Well,
t-shirts.
I've considered, how, it's like underwear is like Fruit of the Loom and things. I'm going to get a
Yeah.
Sharpie and cross out Fruit of the Loom and write Kerbalcast.
Oh,
No, seriously, I want to have a Kerbal Kerbal Space Program T-shirt for every day of the week.
oh yeah.
That way, every time I go out in public, because you know what, Kerbalers live among you. Let the stigma be there no more.
We have to root them out.
That's right. That's right. We live in the shadows no more.
Say it loud. Say it.
Say it proud. I'm a Kerbaler.
Yeah.
I'm James Brown. Say it loud and say it proud. I'm Kerbalin and I'm proud. But anyway, so that's my big news. I've
Yeah.
had yet another Kerbal sighting.
So we'd like to apologize to anyone who's run into us in person.
Well, we're easy to spot now.
Yeah.
Thanks to the shirt.
Yeah.
So anyway, another announcement I want to make. For the week of February the 25th, we may have a very, very short podcast. Do you remember how I mentioned several episodes back that they are remastering the game Homeworld?
Oh yeah.
Steam is now taking pre-orders.
Oh okay. Okay.
And I have already done so. I've
Yeah.
already done it. It's apparently not only it's Homeworld and Homeworld 2 bundled.
Mm-hmm.
And until the day of release, it's like 15% off. It's really not that expensive. For two games, the actual price is like $35.
Yeah.
Right now it's about $30.
Not bad.
And if you pre-order it,
I was about to ask.
I'm assuming, I don't think they've done it yet, but like, for example, I pre-ordered Civ 5 and it preloaded the game. And then,
Oh, 99% of it, then it gets
Yeah.
you the last 1%.
and then the day it released, it was like boom, and it just immediately started being playable. And I suspect they're probably going to do this too. But the week of February 25th, when we start out Kerbalcast that week, it's
Yeah.
going to be, "How's your progress?" And I'm going to go, "I have no idea."
It's like, Biff, how's your Biff, stop playing. Biff.
It's like, what? Huh?
Did you get any fancy thingamadoos for pre-ordering it?
No, not
Okay.
No, those are probably for the people that wait till the day before.
Yeah.
They want to just completely shaft us early reservers.
Oh, you'll probably get it if they come up with a thing.
$35 for two games, that's not bad.
No, not at all for two games that are coming out.
Yeah. And, having played them before, I can tell you, these are very lengthy games.
Yeah.
And they're very involved games. So, I mean, you're getting your money's worth. It's going to be interesting, though, because the first time I played Homeworld, I had never played a strategy game ever. At that point, everything I did was primarily first-person shooters. Okay? And Homeworld is the game that got me into strategy gaming. And I didn't have any space games. Okay? So it's going to be interesting to go back to Homeworld now that I've got Kerbal, which is eating up my time, and I've played other I've played other simulation games. It's going to be interesting to go back and see how the experience is.
Yeah, just to play a genre that you haven't been playing much of.
What I'm curious about is games have a tendency to not age well.
Yeah.
Some games.
I definitely. With all my travel and stuff, I was like, oh, I'm going to go get some DS games. And I go looking through them, I was like, none of these look good.
Yeah.
Even the ones that I was like, hey, that was cool whenever I played it. I was like, it just doesn't look good.
Well, one of the earliest games that I played to completion, a lot of times there were games that I would start and then I'd get bored and I would never complete them. One of the earliest games I ever finished. Did you ever hear of Star Wars Dark Forces 2? Did you ever hear about that one?
I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
At the time I played that game, and I mean that game is massive.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean you spend hours in that game just trying to find your way through the various levels. I remember I played that game, and at the time I was sitting there and I was looking and I was thinking, oh my God, this is photorealistic. This is like watching the movies. This is a playable movie. The graphics are so good. This is incredible. Now I go back to the same game and I go, okay, everybody's head is a block.
It's like non-ironic Minecraft.
Yeah, it's games have some of them do not age well.
Yeah.
Sometimes your memory of a game is so much better than the actual game itself. So I understand that they're remastering it. So I'm not even for the time, Homeworld was a great looking game, but I'm going to be real curious as to what my gameplay experience is going to be as an experienced simulation player versus at the time a complete novice. So anyway, those are my two big announcements. Kerbalers in the wild, they live among us, and Homeworld is coming out later in the month.
Yeah.
And Biff may not have much Kerbal progress that week. So
see, I thought you said the 25th, and I was like, oh, okay, because I knew the February one's not going to have a lot of progress in it. The one near the 14th, because we're going to be doing Kerbal Loveline.
Oh, that's right.
Because near Valentine's Day.
50 Shades of Kerbal.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. For the masochist and all
Yeah,
of
if they hadn't had enough abuse. So.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is going to be interesting. We'll, you know what? That's the week when we roll Big Daddy Love back out.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, baby. You know.
No, you gotta save it.
I want to do some rendezvous with you.
No, thanks.
Yeah. What?
No, thanks.
No, thanks. Yeah, and you wonder why people run away when I try and hug them.
Yeah.
No, that would be, that's right. Valentine's week we'll bring Big Daddy Love back out.
There we go.
We'll do the whole podcast with the Barry White music going.
Just loop it.
Yeah, we'll just loop it.
Like, oh, we can only play 6 seconds without actually having to credit it. So we're just going to play the 6 seconds on a loop.
You remember how a couple episodes ago I went back and edited out all my digressions?
Yeah.
I may have to edit out the entire beginning of this podcast. It's been all digressions.
Okay. Well, you got to have your little thing.
Yeah.
My little thing is I actually yesterday I got to play.
I resent you saying little thing, but go ahead.
It's like sort of space related,
Yes.
but I got to play Star Trek Fleet Captains at my game shop.
Oh yeah,
it's
the board game.
Yeah, it's a Star Trek board game, and it was pretty cool. It was actually, they did a pretty good job. I'd most recently played Firefly and then Star Trek Fleet Captains, and it was kind of cool.
Wasn't that a listener recommendation?
Yeah, I forgot about that letter a long time ago. Somebody asked whether or not it was good. If you are a fan of the show. And
who isn't, other than Fox?
If you're a big fan of the show, you will get some nostalgia kick out of it. If you're looking for like a very well-constructed board game, you're not exactly going to be satisfied. It tends to go on a little long. If you make it okay with your group that you pull some house rules, you can make the game a little bit more streamlined.
Okay.
But it just goes on a little too long. So
Interesting.
personally, I won't own it, but maybe with some expansions or maybe with some house rules, you can make it into a game that plays well besides just being thematic. But otherwise, it fits the theme pretty well.
I would like to try the Star Trek game that you mentioned. Just the brief description. I would like to.
It's
try
really
it.
cool because everybody wins the game in different ways. With Firefly, everybody's trying to do the same stuff. But with fleet captains like the Klingons, most of their victory conditions are based off blowing other people up. And the Starfleet victory conditions are usually based on going and exploring territory. Like they go into unexplored space and scan things and get research and data and stuff. And they go on science missions. And every now and then they'll fight, but not as often as the Klingons would. And then the Romulans, they do a lot of like subterfuge stuff. So they did a really good job.
Is the gameplay fairly original, or is it kind of like Settlers of Catan?
You're saving that one.
I was.
It's I don't know. I would say it combines a lot of previous game mechanisms. If anyone had played anything like Hero Clicks or anything that like Marvel Hero Clicks or Mage Knight, it uses that system.
Cool.
So, but it keeps track of things, and it's really cool because every turn you have to decide what you're going to put the power to, like all power to engines or all power to shields or all power. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have to ask about progress this week because I know I freaked you out big time.
I did not know. Okay, I did not know Steam had the feature where you could I'm going to not even say watch. I'm going to say spy on somebody because that's what was happening.
No, you can't say spy because it clearly tells you somebody's watching.
Yeah. So like
spy would be like
the first time
like
it
if I
happened,
engaged your camera on your computer and I watched you pick your nose while you played the game.
And I'll just pick my nose right here.
Oh,
so
thank you. Boy, there's a video.
We went to. I was playing Sanctum 2, and then all of a sudden I get this blip that says, "Oh, Biff Aldrin wants to watch," and I'm like,
"What?"
I was like, "Oh, that's a little awkward," but yeah. So I click accept, and all of a sudden you're watching me play. I mean, did you see like just my screen as I went and did stuff?
Yeah, everything was exactly. I mean, I could see everything you were doing. I could see all the menus. I could see. I mean, I was seeing exactly the same thing that was on your screen.
Oh, okay. Well, it must have been boring at the start because I was going through a lot of menus. But,
well, it was. I had never played the game, and I wasn't familiar with it at all. So it took me a minute to kind of figure out what you were doing.
Yeah.
But I was surprised. The video quality is really good. Steam it allows you now if you have someone in your friends list. You just click on their name and a drop down menu pops up, and one of the options is watch game. And the reason I found out about it was I was playing Kerbal and I got a request. Somebody wants to watch you play, and I was like, okay. Yeah. It was kind of the same experience you had.
It was weird. I almost started using the in-game chat so you could see what I would say without me having to go into the Steam chat. And do it. But yeah, I hadn't played Sanctum in a while. It was Sanctum 2, and I hadn't played it in a while. I just got an urge to play it. I love that game. I put a ton of hours into it. But you did it again whenever I was playing Kerbal. Yeah.
I wonder if the folks at Steam were looking at Twitch TV, going, if
we might as well,
if people are watching other people play games, why don't we do it? Why don't we set it up where people can watch their friends play their games?
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool because especially something like Kerbal, because we're going to finally talk about Kerbal now. Because something about Kerbal is I could watch you play if you're like, hey, I want to show you Rendezvous. I don't have to come over to your house or I don't have to see you get on a Twitch stream or look up a YouTube video of it. Right. If I have a friend who wants to show me, we could get on Steam chat and I could watch you on Steam stream, or what is it called?
Steam stream.
Steam stream.
There you go.
They should call it that, actually.
You know what? That's your $1 million idea for the week.
There we go.
I don't know this for sure. I think so, but I'm not positive. I think that you can do a gaming headset.
If I got my $1 million from Steam, I would break even. Really?
Yeah, would you?
From all the games I've bought, I'd be like, oh, okay, I break even now.
Yeah. Well, you can finally pay off those student loans, right?
Yeah. No, I just make up for all the games that I've bought through Steam. So,
I think it supports a headset. So I think that if you had a gaming compatible headset, I think you could actually stream what you were doing and actually talk.
Yeah, I know they have Steam chat, like Steam voice chat, where I could look up an individual and do that. So. Yeah, it's something I want to mess with because
Yeah.
like I just had a friend move, so like we could, I don't know,
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
yeah, I could turn on whatever he's playing and just watch him.
Right. Yeah. What's nice about that is it's like you said. There's certain things in the game that and we've discovered this by me struggling trying to describe Rendezvous in the past. But I mean, there's certain things in the game that if you show somebody how to do it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
When you try and explain how to do it, then it's what?
Yeah, and I mean, we could flip it the other way too. Like, you could start watching my stream, and we could set up chat, and you could say, okay, well, now, put one of these on the craft and
Right.
orientate it this way and stuff, and you could actually guide somebody. So
Right.
I think it's actually a pretty cool feature. So starting now,
Yeah.
I am now an advice to hire service. If anyone wants to build a rolly,
You'll show 'em out.
for $20 an hour, I'll guide you over Steam Chat.
Well, you know what? I'll do you one better. For $20 an hour, I will conduct Rendezvous 101.
Oh, for $30 an hour, I won't.
For $40 an hour? For $40? No, you know what? This is so good. I'm going to up it to 50. For $50 an hour, I will do Rendezvous 101, and I will wear pants.
Oh, well,
See?
yeah.
Trust me, that extra 30 is worth it.
See, aren't we glad
the
Steam did
pants.
this and not Twitch, because Twitch has video?
Oh, I
See,
know.
Aren't we just
I
happy?
know.
We're
Aren't
just
we
the happiest
something?
people?
Well, when I tried to watch your Kerbal gameplay,
Yeah.
this is not bulletproof by any stretch of the imagination, because when I first requested to watch you play Sanctum 2, it connected without a hitch.
Yeah.
When I asked to watch you play Kerbal, it just kind of ground around for a minute, and then it went stream not available.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like prime time for how much people are doing it. Like if there's
Maybe.
a time when the fewer
you-
people that are doing it, the easier
You
it
also
is.
said you're on like a family setting, and sometimes you get kicked over to kids setting.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, because we did a family share thing with my friends, so we can use each other's Steam games. So
If you're on like the kid setting, and I go like, I want to watch your gameplay, be like, stranger danger, stranger danger. Some weirdo named Biff wants
get your parents to their room.
go get your parents. Well, tell me about the progress that I didn't see.
Oh, okay, so it's been a lot of contract stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have something in orbit. I have all that going on. I have like a little probe in orbit, and I made a mistake. I should have put like something else, like a thermometer, on there. But I put mystery goo, because I was like, oh, okay, I'll do a little crew report or a mystery goo science check every time I'm flying over an area or I need to transmit science from space around Kerbin. Well, you can only do that once per mystery goo, so I'm just going to do it with each of them and then land it. So that wasn't the best laid plan. So I'm going to send out another one. Okay, so I ran into another stumbling block with the latest update, which is I can only have 2 contracts right now because
Right.
I didn't update my administration building. Well, I took on the contract, Explore the Mun. And then I was like, oh wait, no, I shouldn't do that because I can only hold 2 contracts right now, and I'm not gonna be going there for a while. I can't cancel it. So it's stuck there. So now, unless I upgrade the building, you can't cancel that contract because it's a deadline never.
Right.
I can't cancel it, so I have to complete it, or I only have 1 contract slot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I have to upgrade that building if I want to be able to take more contracts. But I just imagine if I were to take 2 contracts like that, and it turns out I didn't have the skill or ability or funds or whatever to complete them, then I wouldn't be able to take on new contracts to get the money or the skill or the funds to complete them.
Wow.
So unless I miss something on the ability to cancel those, or just going back in my save file and going back a stage.
I would. You remember in the past you actually did that when they first came out with the money system. You actually tried to play to go broke.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could do something similar here, where I wonder if there's not some hidden feature in there that won't allow you to take on 2 contracts like that would effectively lock you out of taking on more.
I really hope so, because as it stands,
and that's top of my head.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, because as it stands, you could actually get so broke you cannot go any farther in this
Right.
game, and you'd have to delete your file. Because
Well, remember they said part of update 1.0 is
there
the
is a
game
game
can
over.
now fire you.
yeah, so if you were to hit a low enough amount of money that you couldn't upgrade the administration building, and you had 2 contracts that you just didn't have the ability to complete that you couldn't cancel, then you would have no way to make money. Like
That would be interesting.
outside of your strategy, which the strategy is not going to yield enough money for you to upgrade those
Yeah.
because you have to be doing contracts to earn the reputation to do so.
Right.
So, yeah, if I don't have 2 contracts that can't be canceled, so I can't test that to see if it's true. But if it is true, that's really not good. But
What kind of contracts are you taking? What kind are you taking now typically?
Well, I put a thing in orbit so I could do the ones where you explore an area around Kerbin or do a field survey. It turns out you have to be below a certain altitude. So I couldn't put something in orbit and just get them as I flew around.
Right.
So that's on me just because I didn't read those contracts before I set that thing up. So, I mean, that was just poor planning on my part. But-
I get that's probably like a camera resolution thing. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be low enough to actually see what you're taking a picture of.
And I've been canceling most contracts I come across unless there's a landed at Kerbin, or there are some that just have a really high payoff, and to the point to where it would pay more than I would spend on ships. I'm still getting some contracts that like are an advance of 50 funds and a payoff of 54 funds. And any ship that I would build is not going to yield me enough money to get that payoff.
Right.
So that didn't make much sense to me. I don't know. I know that these are mostly randomly generated, but that was just one that was just a weird one. It was like, oh, here's $50. Okay, what can I build with $50? Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
But if you do it, you get $50 because it was not one of those ones that's like landed at Kerbin or whatever, like a field survey or a soil sample or something. It was like I had to be a certain speed, a certain altitude, all that. I was like, that's an awful payout.
Yeah. That's very.
So-
It's like the April Fool's contract.
Yeah, so I've hit the point where I'm still doing all that. I think I may take that probe and swing it around the Mun, so I can at least get it to orbit the Mun and science above the Mun parts completed, and then land that thing. And,
What all? Tell me again. What all do you have on the probe?
I
said
have
mystery goo?
3 mystery goo.
Okay.
And then solar panels, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay.
You know what's funny is I may not actually be able to do that because I don't have parachutes on it. So,
Oh.
never mind.
Well, that's right because you'd want to bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll do the orbit around it and then just ditch that thing.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, and the Space Center is the overall building, and then there's the tracking station. The tracking station, I leveled it up, so I got conics. Turns out that's not what I thought it was. I'm not even sure what it is. Like,
Okay.
I thought it was the ability to build maneuvers. Maybe my game messed up, and I just wasn't, because every now and then your game messes up and you just can't build maneuver nodes. Maybe it was doing that, or maybe it just didn't give me what I thought it was going to give me. So I just kind of built that thing. I upgraded it, and in retrospect, it's not giving me anything. So it's really weird.
So you're kind of wishing you hadn't done that, huh?
Yeah, it would have been nice to have the money back to put towards some other really expensive building.
Oh. Okay. We have to stop talking about this immediately.
Oh, why?
I looked up. I typed in conics on Google, and the first thing that came up, the word conics and algebra are right next to each other.
Oh.
We have to stop.
No, we're done.
We have to stop.
Yeah,
I will not. I'll be traumatized.
that's above my grade level.
I'm kidding. Okay. So anyway, so
Yeah,
no,
so
no
I
conics.
thought it was-
no conics.
Well,
What about Harry Connick Jr.?
Yeah. So
Oh, that was bad. Oh,
so I need to
should have warned everybody.
I need to go back and try it again to see if it does give me maneuver nodes and the game was just messing up.
Right.
Because like there are times where I'll be in some weird setting where it just won't. I don't know. Some perfect storm will happen and it just won't work.
I've told you it doesn't happen that often, but once in a while, especially if I've been playing for a long time, certain game features will drop out.
Yeah.
Like the ability to select something as a target disappears.
Yeah.
Or, to set a maneuver node or just some weird thing just disappears.
And so what I've done before, I didn't do it this time, but what I've done before is like I'll time warp a couple times. I'll go back to the Space Center, come back, and like I'll just keep tapping the tapping it, hoping I jar some soldering loose or something. Yeah.
That reference will come into play later in the episode. Yeah, the one nice thing, North Star had recommended that I load up that mod that rescales all the textures down to low. It's because of that, it is very easy now to back out of the game and get right back into it.
Yeah.
Because the first time you load that and it rescales all the textures, it takes a while. Mm-hmm. From that point on, because the textures are now so small, the game just loads, just boom.
Yeah.
So when I do run into those gameplay, I guess, game time induced bugs, it's pretty easy to back out, restart the laptop, and then go right back into the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's your progress for the week.
That's
Avoid
my progress
at all.
Yeah. The thing I have planned is one, see if what I bought actually does anything, and continue trying to do small contracts until I can get a probe to swing around the mun.
Okay. Do you want to hear my progress?
Yeah.
It's 3 words.
Well, hold on. Let me guess. Eve?
No.
Okay.
I'll give you a hint. The first one is
Planets of Jewel.
No.
Oh.
No. No. Okay, now the suspense is just too much. You know what? The buildup has been so horrible. Now that the payoff is just going to pale. My 3-word progress.
Kerbal.
I killed Jeb.
Oh, I thought Kerbal hates me, but that works too.
Okay, you know that this is going to sound, compared to some of the progress reports that I've had recently, this is going to sound so puny. Okay?
What? Have you heard like the past 5 that I've done? It's like, hey, they let me in the VAB. I forgot my locker combination.
I started the game,
but it's okay,
Okay. Before I was working my way through the moons of Jewel, and I was fighting the atmosphere on Eve and all this other stuff. Well, I mentioned last week that Amy Kay had challenged me. Mm-hmm. She said, install FAR.
And
Starfar. And Deadly Reentry. And she said, install those 2 mods and go to the mun and back. That was the challenge. Okay. So I installed the mods. And right away I noticed that the aerodynamics are more unforgiving, but it was still well within my range of experience. And I made it to the mun, and landed with no problem, got back up, docked with the mothership, returned to Kerbin, and the whole time I'm thinking, oh, this is not that bad. I mean, it's more difficult. Mm-hmm. Engines have a tendency to burn out. Overheating actually means something in FAR.
Yeah, I see that all the time in the base game, and I'm like, I've never once
Yeah.
had this be like, ooh, like with some nuke engines every now and then, I'm like, ooh, that's a little warm. Turn it off. Okay, I'm cool. Turn it back on.
Well, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've run full throttle, and the overheat will be, a millimeter away from, just a hair away from the top, and it doesn't do anything. Well, with FAR, you get up around 75%, and your engine starts flaming.
Yeah.
And you get too much higher and they start exploding. So it actually means something.
Yeah.
And air resistance starts to mean something. And, there's just, like I said, it becomes more realistic. But again, it's well within my range of experience. It was more unforgiving, but I was able to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I went to the mun, I landed, got back up, and I was on my way back to Kerbin. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm a better player than I thought. This has not turned out to be as difficult as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then I tried to re-enter.
It's not the happy re-entry mod.
No. Yeah, it's well named because I started, I don't know why, I don't know why I developed this habit. I think what it is I hate cutting loose anything that has fuel.
Yeah.
Even if it makes it more difficult to have all that extra ship, if there's still a couple of drops left, for some reason, I just hate letting go of extra fuel. So, when you re-enter, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to detach the capsule and write it down. I have always, I have a habit of, I just ride the whole ship down.
Yeah.
And at some point when I get close to the ground and it becomes obvious I'm not going to need to maneuver anymore, the only thing left is to fire the parachute, that's when I detach the capsule. Okay? Mm-hmm. But I typically hold on to the ship as long as I can on the off chance that as I come down, I'm going to need to make some kind of powered maneuver. So here I come into the atmosphere with my entire ship still intact, right? And, you know, I've got blazing flame effects on the screen, and I'm thinking, oh, that's looking nice. And then all of a sudden, error messages start going off. You know, It was like, you know, first one comes up, and this was no big deal because I'd seen it on the way up. But first one comes up, and it says, shoot deployment unsafe. And I'm like, well, obviously, because I'm going really fast, and I can't fire my parachute here. And I'm not going to, you know, this isn't part testing. I'm not going to fire it at this level. Uh-huh. So, you know, I'm fine. Okay, fine, shoot deployment. I wasn't going to do that anyway. But then it starts, you know, like, you know, ship is overheating. It's overheating. Things are getting hot. It's getting hot. And then it was G-forces are building up. G-forces. And I'm going, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
Because, you know, G-forces is another one of those things where you've got the little meter on the side of your nav ball. But, I mean, what does it mean?
Yeah, you never really pay attention to it.
Doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't matter.
And, you know, so now the thing's like screaming at me. I've got all these error messages. It's like, your ship's overheating, and you got too much G-force, and Jeb is dead. And then the whole thing explodes.
He died before the thing hit the ground.
Yeah, the G-forces killed him.
Wow.
And then it was like right about the time, because it says, you know, like, Jeb is dead. And so I'm like hitting the space bar and doing all this stuff. I'm going to fire the parachute. I'm going to do something. And then the whole thing exploded.
Wow.
And so now I'm watching this, what was left of my capsule with apparently a dead Jeb in it, falls to Earth, and because he's not alive anymore and can't hit the deploy shoot button, even though I'm sitting there, you know, tapping away on the space bar. Yeah. I just, you know, all I did was just sit there and watch it go straight into the ground. So, yeah, that's my progress. I killed Jeb.
I mean, have you been quick saving? Were you able to revert and try it again?
Well, I'm past that. I'm sure I had, but it just never occurred to me at the time to go back and do that. Uh-huh. But I was just going, what is this? What do you mean G-forces killed Jeb? So, okay, so...
You know, I know a guy named Newton. You may want to...
Was his first name Fig? Ooh, I'm on fire. Well, much like Jeb was on fire.
Much like Jeb was on fire.
Yeah, so my progress after I killed Jeb, which, by the way, he is still listed as KIA in the Space Center. When I go to the astronaut complex, because, you know, he comes back after a couple of days. I keep going,
hoping he's had like a living reentry.
Yeah, I keep going back to the astronaut complex, and they keep going, you know, Jeb, KIA, and there's like a memorial set up for him, and you know, and it's like, dadgummit, when's Jeb coming back?
They're all still wearing black, you know.
Yeah. I feel weird flying. My pilot now is named Desi, you know, and I feel a little weird flying with a pilot named Desi. Mm-hmm. You know, like, Lucy, I'm home. But anyway, yeah, so after that experience, I discovered that thanks to my new mods, re-entry is a skill that I now must relearn. So that's my progress this week after killing Jeb is now I am practicing re-entry. I'm back to the basics. I'm relearning how to enter Kerbin orbit and not kill the Kerbinaut on board. That's where I'm at.
But I don't know. The stakes are higher now, so I mean,
the stakes are higher.
Yeah, that's way more interesting.
Well, I emailed Amy, and I was like, okay,
you got me.
You were right, and she wrote me back, and she went, yeah, not much of a difference, right? So anyway.
Yeah, anytime, like, because she said in a lot of her updates and stuff that she hasn't really gone far beyond the MUN, but she sounds very competent. It's because she's dealing with some really like hard mods. You know?
Well, the thing that I was a little concerned about, because you know she said install FAR and install deadly reentry, and she specifically said go to the MUN, land, and come back. Mm-hmm. And she has talked so many times about her landers flipping over. And, you know, so when I deorbited, and I mean, you know, I had picked a to test myself when I land on the mun. I like to try and pick a target, and I try and hit that target. Rather than just bring it down somewhere, I try and pinpoint. And I did exactly like I've done before. I made a pinpoint landing exactly where I wanted to be. And then I got back up and I redocked with the mothership and came back. And I mean, all of that was exactly the same. I didn't have any trouble with the lander trying to fall over on me, anything. So that's why right up to the point where I started getting all the crazy error messages, I thought that things were pretty much the same.
Yeah.
A little bit more difficult, but pretty much the same. So anyway, yeah, I'm learning re-entry now. Can you believe that?
That's rough.
I mean, that's like a first week kind of skill.
Yeah, it's like, welcome to Kerbal Space Program.
One question that I have, though, they're talking about with Update 1.0, they're saying that they are now incorporating their version of FAR and their version of Deadly Reentry into the game. Well, you remember they said that they've improved the aerodynamics, and they said that that reentry now is going to be more realistic. Question: I will be curious to find out the answer to. Will that basically get rid of FAR and Deadly Reentry as mods? Because even though they integrated Enhanced Navball into the game, Enhanced Navball is still a mod that you can install, and it still has features that are not in the game.
I think that it will be, it'll have those features, but any features that aren't used, those mods will still provide. Yeah,
I'm just curious. I wonder if I'll be curious what the status of those mods are. Because, when they did for example, when they did the space planes, didn't that get rid of that mod? It just integrated it into the game?
Yeah, because that was a complete adoption of that mod.
Yeah.
But Navball, they didn't adopt that mod. They just had similar features made into an update.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with Spaceplane Plus, it was like, hey, we're just going to take that mod.
Right.
But
I'll be real curious.
With everything else, it's like, oh, here's our version. Here's our box and label next to theirs at the grocery store.
I will say I am surprised that we are not talking about Update 1.0 right now. I felt certain that by the time we recorded this podcast, it would have been out.
So, I mean, did they have a hard date set, or they just said it was going to be soon?
They don't ever seem to really do hard dates.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teasing. Oh, we can't tell you, but it's gonna be soon. It's right here. It's behind the curtain. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it's good. You can't wait to see it. But we're not gonna tell you.
So, I don't know. I don't know when that's gonna hit.
I honestly thought it was gonna be last Tuesday.
Yeah.
And in case anyone's curious why we released the podcast early last week, I thought the update is probably going to be coming out on Tuesday. At least that's the indication I was getting.
So we don't like.
And I thought, it'd be nice if the podcast was relevant for at least a day.
Yeah, if ever.
If ever. Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, I guess. Hey, first time for everything, right?
Yeah.
So no, I'm surprised. It may be this week. Because they're still kind of teasing like it's out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be I'll be curious to see when it comes out, and I'll be curious to see what
how it's received.
Yeah.
Speaking
what? My luck. I'm sorry. My luck is they're going to release it on the week of February the 25th.
Yeah.
And it'd be like,
okay,
the update came up.
How come you haven't played any of it?
Yeah, but so did Homeworld.
I was playing Homeworld.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Speaking of all that, I think we have a response or two to what we talked about last week.
Yes, we do.
Coming up
Boy, do we have that.
The mission briefing.
Yeah. So are we done with our progress?
That's good for me.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on then.
And now your letters and the latest news in the mission briefing.
I have a big old pile of letters here, and the first one has your name on it as the reader. You are the reader of the letter that I guess is the readee.
I get it. Let me just do it.
What, you don't like the whole readee thing?
No, I just don't know how to read. From Javster, hey, haven't written in a while. I haven't been playing much KSP lately, mainly because real life is important and you can't spend your life playing that game.
Hey, you take that back.
In my honest opinion, KSP is not ready for release. It was an alpha recently, then beta for a tiny amount of time, and suddenly Squad announces they're going to be released. It seems like they've rushed to get KSP out the door. I agree KSP will be released as a complete game, and it is not currently beginner-friendly. How does a newbie who just jumps in, how do they just go ahead and play? Squad should consider what the play experience will be like for newbies jumping right into any mode, newbies who play the tutorials, and newbies who do some research before playing. I have a question for you. Do you consider the latest SpaceX launch a failure? Every news site calls it a failure, even though the main objective, resupplying the ISS, was achieved. How important do you think the first stage landing was in perspective with the main mission?
Do you want to answer that before?
Yeah, before we move on.
My answer to that is the same answer I have with pretty much anything that comes to space. Mm-hmm. This is hard.
Yeah, and while I would say that, like any space program, anytime any of this happens, a mission can be a failure, but that does not mean SpaceX is a failure.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, I know that they didn't talk about this in the movie The Right Stuff, but they talked about it in the book The Right Stuff. There's that whole montage of they were trying to, the Soviets had a man in orbit already, had already put a man in orbit. Meanwhile, we were trying to, they'd put Sputnik up in orbit. I'm getting my timeline all twisted up. But we were trying to get a rocket powerful enough. We were trying to develop a powerful enough rocket that would put something into orbit. And they were doing a lot of testing, and, the rockets were blowing up. And, of course, the press was having a field day.
Yeah.
The Soviets put Sputnik in orbit, and, ours can't even get off the launch pad. One of the things they pointed out in The Right Stuff was the astronauts and the engineers were all kind of going, what's wrong with you? This is why we do this. This is part of the This is part of the test and design process. This stuff happens. Given what they're trying to do, and the fact that they completed the mission itself. They just didn't complete all elements of it. And this isn't one of those things where they do it and they go, oh, well, that didn't work. This is one of those things where they do it, something goes wrong, and they go, okay, what went wrong? Let's learn from it. It's the same thing. It's like whenever, you know how many Mars landers have failed at the actual landing stage, and people have a field day with it. Oh, we can't even get a lander on Mars. Really?
Yeah.
You're sending something millions of miles away. First of all, you're trying to hit something great distances in time and space in advance, and you're trying to do it completely automated. Well, of course you're going to have problems doing it. So
we really
I'm ranting.
As people, we really like highlight reels.
Yeah.
It's just we really like seeing these blazing successes, and we tend to look at the past with kind of rose-tinted glasses when it comes to our achievements. So whenever we hear about all these space missions going completely, according to plan, when we see something screw up, it seems like, uncommon, or it tends to stick out.
Well, I can't remember his title, Save My Life, but where they landed the probe on the comet here recently, Rosetta. One of the people involved in the thing, the quote that I remember was, he says, the problem with success is it makes it look easy. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the criticism here is that this is supposed to be easy. No, it's not. You know, I mean, what Elon Musk is trying to do here is light years beyond what anybody else is trying to do.
Yeah.
And every step is a learning process. So, that part of the mission failed, but I wouldn't say that the mission itself failed. And I think that it's another step on the road.
And the only thing that most of those media people were paying attention to was the crash, because that's what got their attention.
Well, sure.
So the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, it failed. It's
right.
Well, no. I mean, the thing crashing into the surface or anything like that, that could have been part of the mission for all they know. It wasn't. I'm not saying it was, but if it was
conspiracy,
if it was part of the plan, let's say it was supposed to resupply and then just crash somewhere, no shoot, nothing like that. in a bubble, they would have thought, oh, the thing failed.
Right.
Here, everything succeeded. It did everything it was supposed to, except for one part, and that part crashed.
Well, that's the nature of news, though. I mean, you're never going to turn on the evening newscast and hear, all a passenger jet landed safely today.
Yeah. It's just
you never hear that. News,
because,
by its definition, is something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it has to show you something that doesn't normally happen.
Right.
If it said, if you saw a news story about the passenger airplane landing safely, that means most of them crash.
Yeah.
It's like, So
that'd be like reading in the newspaper you drove home today and didn't get in an accident.
Yeah, it must be pretty bad if that's what you're reading.
Well, there's another question here. I'm going to let you field this one because this is more your area.
If you had one contract of your choice implemented into the game, what would it be?
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't thought about new contracts. My main issue has been fixing the contract system, or at least what I think would be a fix to the contract system. So as for a type of contract, I don't know, because I don't remember if I've seen ones where you plant flags on places, but I haven't seen ones where you collect soil samples.
Right.
So in the early game, I think that it would make just as much sense to do some geology surveys on Kerbin.
Right.
And to be like land in different biome kind of things, and those could exist. I just haven't run into them yet. But as for a type of contract, really, you can only disembark in the new contract mode. You can only disembark on Kerbin. So if I landed on the Mun before updating, I wouldn't be able to get my guy out on the Mun. So I should be able to get some soil samples and maybe have some contracts about collecting soil samples, so I can harvest as much reputation, science, and funds from Kerbin as possible, especially if the mode as is stays, because I need money.
You know how you talked about scalable difficulty with the contracts?
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought that kind of built on that. The parts testing, to me, should serve as an in-game tutorial. That's something we've talked about already.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is, in addition to scalable difficulty, what about if they set it where you could have like beginner, intermediate, advanced level contracts, meaning that somebody who is completely brand new to the game would select beginner contracts, and it would be, contract 1, build a ship, contract 2, launch the ship, contract 3, fire a parachute. Every contract would be teaching you how to do something. It's the equivalent, you play games and it goes, press E to open door.
Yeah, it's like, oh, good job.
And all the beginner contracts would be designed as tutorials. And the reason I say beginner, intermediate, advanced is because once you've gone through those and you have your basic skills, if you restart the game, you don't want to go through all that again.
Yeah.
So set your skill at that point to like intermediate. And then intermediate gets you into aerial surveys and landing on the Mun and things like that. To me, that would be a more effective use of the contract system.
I would almost say that they could have like flight school exams as contracts.
Yeah.
So if you were a beginner,
like
they had like the one for going to the Mun is orbit and transmit science, land, transmit science, and I think plant a flag.
Yeah.
Is I think most of it.
Yeah.
Well, you could do that with flight school, have a like multi-tiered contract where you just, anytime you complete a part of it, you get something. And so you're given unlimited funds, but you can only work on that contract. And it is, for like a safety contract. So it would be like use a parachute, have landing legs, do this, like successfully deploy and land with landing legs. And then you could have one for, space planes, like take off from the runway, land on the runway.
Right.
And so you could have that contract open and you could use anything from it. Now, once you completed all the flight school contracts, you'd have a starting amount of funds that may actually be more than if you started the game normally. And you would have the reputation and stuff, so you could actually like go straight in. And it would also walk you through starting a space program. Right. So then you would have the money to get your little shabby, space center and upgrade it from there. So you'd actually graduate like Kerbal flight school and learn the basics of the game.
Yeah, and see, the way I envision it is, like beginner contracts would be tutorial, intermediate would be like advanced tutorial, and then actually advanced contracts. That to me is where you actually get into missions.
Yeah.
That's where you actually, where they actually set, for lack of a better word, think of contracts as levels within the game.
Yeah.
It's another level of Donkey Kong or something, but the contract lays out specifically what has to be done. This is going to sound more harsh than I intend it to, but I think the reason that I have such a problem with the contract system is it really, to me, goes back to a failure of imagination. It makes me think of a story that I heard back when engineers were working on the idea of personal computers in the home. Back at a time when that wasn't common, and that wasn't even remotely in the future. They were thinking about, the engineers were thinking about, okay, we're going to put a computer in the kitchen for a housewife. Mm-hmm. And the problem the engineers ran into was they couldn't think of what a computer in the kitchen would be good for. The only thing they could come up with was, it indexes recipes.
Yeah.
And that's about all they could come up with. It never occurred to them, because, you look at, and we're way past housewife in the kitchen now.
Yeah.
But, look at how people use computers, i.e. iPhones and laptops and tablets and things. Look at how they use them in the kitchen now. They use them to listen to podcasts. They use them to look at websites. They use them to do any number of things. Very rarely do people call up recipes. Mm-hmm. They do.
Yeah.
But that's like one of about 4 billion other things that they do. There was a failure of imagination in terms of what a computer in the kitchen, or any room of the house, to be honest, what people would use it for. And the contract system, to me, is kind of that. It's like I don't think they figured out what to do with it yet.
Yeah.
I think, in a way, the contracts to me are all indexing recipes.
If you think about that example with the computer, there was utility,
Mm-hmm.
entertainment, and convenience.
Right.
And what they were trying to bring was utility
and
maybe convenience, but it didn't have an entertainment quality. If you look at what we're dealing with the contracts,
mm-hmm.
they're not exactly entertaining.
Yeah.
They have a utility, and most of them are not convenient.
Yeah.
That's what most people, that's what our response has been through these letters, is that people just aren't enjoying doing contracts a whole bunch,
Well, it's the part of the game. A lot of games have this. There are great games out there that have parts to them that you have to get through to get to the great part.
Yeah.
And it sounds, what I'm hearing is contracts are the parts you have to get through to get to the good parts.
Yeah, it seems like they're just making that road longer.
Yeah. And as a game designer, that's the part of the game that you want to minimize, because every game is going to have a certain amount of, otherwise it's just all cheats.
Uh-huh.
Every game is going to have a certain amount of, I've got to do this to do that.
Yeah.
But if doing this is such an obstacle to doing that, then it's a problem.
Then I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, back to Jobster's letter. And here's a challenge to explore another point of view for the game. Imagine your Kerbals actually live on another planet or moon. Build a rocket to visit Kerbin and return. Build your rocket as normal, use the infinite fuel cheat to fly and land on the planet moon, and then start the mission. Go to Kerbin and return home safely. Happy Kerbaling, Jabster.
That's an interesting idea. I wondered at first when he said the infinite fuel cheat. I thought, well, okay, what kind of a challenge is that? But then I realized, I see what he's doing. He's saying
to set it up.
Use it as a starting point. Okay, well, let's move on. Our next letter comes to us from HRD, and it says, Dear Biff and Nos, I love Kerbal Space Program. Last episode, you were discussing whether or not it should leave early access. We got a lot of letters on this.
Yeah, we did.
But when I play it, I tend to forget. This makes me really excited for the next update, early access or not. I'm actually really bad at the game, though. I have 84 hours in-game time with barely any sandwich breaks. That's a term you coined.
Sandwich time.
Isn't it funny how just some throwaway and it's like we use it every time now? But I've never successfully landed on any celestial body, not even the Mun. I've gotten to orbit and even gotten pretty good at docking, but I've never completed a successful mission outside of low Kerbin orbit. It makes me sad. I have a funny story to share with you about one of my attempts to put Jebediah on the Mun. I'm one of those people who, if I play a game, I play it on hard difficulty. Perhaps not the best idea with KSP. This means no reverting a flight and no quick saving. Anyway, I actually successfully landed Jebediah on the Mun after a lot of planning. I was really happy with this because I had been doing hours of test flights with unmanned rockets, and every time I tried to land, I crashed them. I was expecting to crash this one too. I collected some science and planted the flag. That's when disaster struck. That's the hallmark of a good story.
Yeah.
You know, when you get to that moment, it's like everything's great. And then I put Jebediah's EVA rockets on and flew him towards the rocket. Instead of gracefully landing on the ladder, I instead propelled him headfirst into a landing strut and proceeded to watch as 1, Jeb lay unconscious on the ground, and 2, the rocket fell on its side. When Jebediah, man, he must have whacked that thing good.
Yeah.
When Jebediah woke up a few seconds later, he went to the rocket and got in. Convinced I could get this thing back off the ground, I tapped the throttle. The rocket blew up and took my most prestigious space Kerbal with it. Just wanted to say that, even though I hadn't had much luck with this one, I love your podcast and it's taught me a lot. Looking forward to the next episode. HRD, PS, RIP Jebediah.
According to the previous letter, I don't consider that mission a failure.
Yeah.
Part of it was a failure.
Yeah. It was a success until you killed the guy.
It wasn't to Jeb, but, it was to you.
Hey, we got a letter from Tyler Durden.
No, it's Tyler F.
Oh.
Tyler Furden.
Okay. No, and that's right. If it was Tyler Durden, I would have written it myself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello again, Nos and Biff. This was supposed to be for the last week, but you released early. Anyway, I wanted to share with you my opinion on what word to use for a bunch of Kerbals. If Kerbals were magical and had brooms, they're already green, then they would be a coven. Now remember the interview with Max Maps on episode 16. Harvester used to modify rockets and put 10 full of men on them and called them Kerbals. Knowing the Kerbal way, the Kerbals would have exploded, classifying them as shrapnel. This is my favorite word, seeing that it goes back to the root of the word. Debris would not work as well because Kerbals are not typical fragments and scattered around or in your vessel. Thank you for your great podcast, Homer to your mobile, and GLHF. Good luck, have fun, Tyler F.
I added the good luck, have fun, because when I came across that acronym, I went, gloof.
Oh, I didn't know what it meant until...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
acronyms are supposed to be like time saving.
Yeah, but there's so many happening.
But there's so many of them, you have to go look them up.
Yeah, SBBQ. Okay, whatever.
Well, some of them make sense, but
yeah.
Look who wrote in to gloat from Amy K.
Oh.
Hi, guys. First of all, welcome back, Nos. It's great to have you back, and I hope I kept the chair warm for you last week.
It's nice to hear the second best person to sit to be a co-host. Speaking from Amy's perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I was wondering.
I see you got that bum back on there. Maybe you should bring me back.
Well, remember, she's from England, so bum has a total different meaning there.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Great. I've got my bum back.
They call them hobos?
Yeah. I'm all about that bum. Bum.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to write in responding to North Star, which surprisingly, we do not have a letter this week from North Star.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. He's a pretty regular contributor.
I know. I'm North Star.
I don't know. Based off the content of the last letter, maybe he has a hit squad on him and he's on the lam.
That's true. That's true. Or maybe he turned into the Hulk and it's like,
Yeah.
3 days since an incident. As I can imagine, it would spark... She's talking about North Star's letter. As I can imagine, it will spark quite a bit of debate and wanted to get my thoughts in, too. Yes, it sparked quite a debate. I absolutely agree that, in my opinion, KSP is not ready for a 1.0 release. I think they will really be shooting themselves in the foot by doing so, and the decision could very well have a negative effect on the positive press they've had up until now about being a shining example of early access. I think that if they are feature and scope complete as far as their original design document, then that is the time when the beta should get into full flow, and the whole focus should be on bug fixing and fine tuning, which was North Star's point.
Yeah.
As much as I love KSP, and I really do, just to be clear, there are too many bugs and instabilities for it to be ready for 1.0. That said, they could surprise us all by releasing a 1.0 that is completely bug-free, 64-bit on Windows. Why it's not 64-bit on OS X is beyond me, though, and completely polished. But if they do that, they will be the first game in history to do so in one beta version. I really hope they repeal the decision, or at the very least, if they must go to 1.0, go to a 1.0 RC, i.e. release candidate, that still gives them a bit of a pass and an ability to say, we aren't quite there yet, but almost. And it allows them to save face with being at 1.0. Homer to your mobile, Amy K. That last thing that she said is a very important point that I think we should address. We have tossed out the question, or the question was raised to us.
Yeah.
Should they do a 1.0 release? Let's be honest. They have to now. They have no choice.
Yeah, they already said they're going to do it. So for them to say they're going to do it and then go back on it, I mean, that's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you can provide a good enough reason why,
sure.
Which, I mean, is if the reason's like, oh, yeah, maybe we didn't remember,
our code got hacked, or,
Or something as simple as, what, we thought we were close, but we realized there's a lot of issues, and we're sorry, we're not going to take it out of,
Yeah.
According to most of the letters we've gotten, everyone would be fine with that, because they would rather that. If you look at what most of the letters have said, it's they don't want them to ruin their good press.
Right.
It's like they're concerned about the reputation of Kerbal just as much as they're concerned about the game.
But my concern is this, Squad is a company.
Yes.
And when a company announces a goal, if they then retract that goal, the concern, because I know that, I don't know if Squad has a meeting room or a conference room or what, but, I'm sure if they heard last week's episode, I can't imagine somebody in that meeting raised their hand and said, hey, those two dumbbutts on Kerbalcast said we shouldn't release update 1.0. And then, the room burst into laughter.
Yeah.
Because they've announced that they're going to do this.
Yeah.
If they say, you know what, never mind, the concern, I mean, if I were there, the concern would be we're going to end up looking like we don't know what we're doing.
I mean, and let's say they did. The next time they said we're going into, we're going out of
then
beta.
the press would be, but that's what they said last time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can talk about this, but I think it's kind of a done deal. I don't know that they have many options at this point. I think they have to do it. Now, I like Amy's idea of kind of modifying it where it's, we're out of beta, but, it's there's still, something that indicates that this is still being worked on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, rant concluded. Let's see. You've got the next letter.
Okay, this one comes from Top Boom. Dear Nos and Biff, I am writing in regards to Nos's feelings on episode 36 that receiving outside assistance from the KSP community is a detraction from the game. As we all know, KSP has no instruction manual. Even in career mode, it's still very much a sandbox game, and it also has a very steep learning curve. Furthermore, the current early game imbalance is creating a lot of difficulty for new players. In fact, anyone starting a new career save. I'm a pretty advanced player even, and I don't know what to play without maneuver nodes. So why on Kerbin are we subjecting newbies to that? Not long ago, KSP newbies were told to play career, learn the game, but now career's hard mode. Okay, so if Squad rebalances everything so that the early game is easier, how does that resolve Nos's concern that advanced concepts like, for example, efficient launching, precision landings, etc., aren't explained without being told by someone on the forums or on YouTube? Do we want Squad to build mega tutorials or tooltips that will show us how to do these things? I personally would rather they continue developing new features and refining the game, giving us more tools to play with, and let the community take on the role of teaching one another how to play. It It's a wonderfully rare thing these days to have a game with such a professional and supportive community. Thanks for listening. Top Boom.
What do you think about that? The the idea that the game itself relies so much on outside assistance. I know this is ground we've covered somewhat before, but
okay, so let's take something where you have limited internet access.
Right.
Where you only get the internet, you only have the ability to go on the internet, or your computer can only handle it. Like my computer, for example, if I have a browser open and there's anything going on in there, like I have a dual monitor setup.
Right.
If I'm watching a YouTube,
oh, you do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, if I'm watching a video in the other monitor,
can I say it? Can I say it?
What?
Sweet.
Yeah. If I'm watching something in the other monitor while playing Kerbal, it'll crash my game.
Right.
If I have a lot of tabs and I'm messing around and going back and forth in and out of the game, my game will also crash.
Right.
If I'm doing too many things that involve Kerbal outside of Kerbal, it will crash it. So I have to have like all my materials beforehand. Okay, let's say that's just my computer. My computer can run a pretty decent amount of things. It's not the most top of the line thing ever, but it does okay. Let's say my computer's not the factor. Let's say somebody else is playing and they don't have internet access at that time, or their internet's out and they're playing. If they come to a stumbling block, if they can't figure it out, they can't figure it out.
Right.
Or a kid who's not, his parents won't let him go online for whatever reason. They don't have his computer in his room hooked up to the internet, or they have limited access and they switch it on and off at certain times. Well, he's stuck.
Yeah.
I don't expect the game to teach me how to rendezvous. I don't expect it to teach me how to do an interplanetary transfer. I do expect it to teach me how to use the functions for putting a ship together in the VAB, to where I have to look at like all the right-clicking stuff.
Right.
And we just talked about it in an earlier letter, having a contract that is seriously like, this is flight school. This is how you do the basics.
Yeah.
I mean, that would help to learn how to do things in the game. But to learn how the game functions, like what functions I need to use to do things, when do I right-click these things? Or how do I change fuel between, vessels? Right. Like whenever I attach something, if something's docked, how do I move fuel between, fuel cells?
Well, I remember, don't you remember, this was a long time ago, but we started getting letters because you had asked me about when I was doing an interplanetary transfer, and I was talking about how I was coming in too high or too low or too far away and wasting a lot of fuel trying to correct. And immediately this cascade of letters came in going, you can right click and focus view on a planet and it'll show you what your entry point is going to look like.
Yeah.
And it was like, I had no clue.
I think there should be something to be said for functions in the game.
And that's something I use all the time now.
Yeah.
So
teaching somebody how to, like I'll use an example with board games. They recently showed that the Green Bay Packers play Settlers of Catan. Well, in one of the interviews, one of the guys said, yeah, it's really rough. You'll go in and you'll start playing, but they don't teach you all the rules. So you'll try to do something and they'll say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you can't do that. Well, why didn't you teach them all the rules at the beginning?
Yeah.
Part of the game is it has a rule book and you can learn that rule book. Well, they didn't hand them the rule book. They just said, hey, come play with us.
Oh, okay.
But anytime you try to do something, we're like, oh, no, can't do that. Can't do that.
I'm sorry. For a second, I had like this flash to The Shining. Come and play with us.
Yeah. So it's not conducive to a good play environment.
Right.
So letting somebody know how the game works is very different from how to play the game.
But how would you do that? Because Kerbal is unlike, for example, I mentioned Half-Life 2 earlier. Half-Life 2 has a great tutorial beginning.
Yeah.
Because people are talking to you and things are happening and it's telling you how to play the game, but it's doing it in a way where it doesn't feel like a tutorial.
They could make it really simple, like when each of the different Kerbal characters introduces themselves, saying like, "This is the tracking station. This is this."
But but other than text boxes, how do you get away from that?
That's going to be the main thing you're going to have in a game like this, because there's a lot of reading in this game anyway. Like reading what individual parts are. Each part has its own flavor text. Then reading the contracts. This is the kind of game where reading's going to be heavy. I just had $1 million idea. I saw a look change on your face.
Yes, because I had an idea just to. Well, you know what it is? It's a Kerbal Life and what you were talking about have just blended into my brain and into this week's $1 million idea.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Oh, trust me, you're ready for this. What if there was, and this is top of my head, okay? So just take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I promise. I mean, you have literally heard the amount of thought I've given this from the time I went, oh, Eureka! What about having an in-game radio chatter? Just like what we get with the space program, where they go, where it talks to you and it says, like, you set a maneuver.
It would have to have text boxes anyway. Like, they could have a radio voiceover, or they have voiceover from a character or something if they wanted to.
I'm just saying, like,
ground.
You get what I'm saying, though. Ground to flight chatter.
Yeah.
It actually tells you what to do.
Yeah. See, I think the contracts and stuff, if they break them down easy enough, you could find out how to do each individual thing. Like,
hey, we could be the ground announcer.
Oh, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So, to answer those questions, like, I really think that being dependent on outside sources for how to play the game, not how to best play the game, but how to play the game, is not, to me, it doesn't feel like a complete game.
Yeah.
Even if the game was complete, bugs fixed and everything, if people don't know how to play it whenever they first enter, not being there, having their hand held throughout the entire thing, and, but if you go in, it's like, okay, it's like sitting somebody down in front of an audio board or in front of anything like that and say, all right, go ahead and do this. Well, I don't know what any of the buttons do.
Yeah.
Well, you'll figure it out. It's like, well, it'd be a lot faster if you told me what the buttons did.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could hover over something and it would give me the options, or in those tutorials, they could do something as simple as one of those little Kerbal characters saying, hey, be sure to right-click everything.
Right.
You
could have the Microsoft Office paperclip come jumping out.
Yeah. I would take it.
It looks like you're trying to do a rendezvous.
At times, I would almost welcome him, and just make something called,
really.
Yeah,
I think you're the first person I've ever heard that. Most people think of ways to like twist him into really obscene shapes.
Yeah, if that is too much, or too much to ask, or it's too far gone, then make a manual for the game. The guys who made the game make a manual, so they know all the ins and outs of it. Make it easy to reference, easy to read, and easy to understand.
Yeah.
And then put it in options. Anytime you hit escape, it would be Kerbal Handbook. And so you'd click on it, and then you could search through it or look up any certain thing, and there would be like an area for key commands. There would be an area for rendezvous, and it wouldn't tell you how to. It would just give you a quick, explanation of, hey, blah, blah, blah. Here's how you do this. And if it really came to it, and you were trying to do something, maybe it had as a tab that would come up on your side screen, and you could click it and say, you're currently, in a sphere of influence that isn't Kerbin. This is what that means. That's a really good point that you brought up, because it occurs to me the problem isn't that there isn't outside assistance, it's that there's a lot of outside assistance. Yeah.
When I was trying to learn how to rendezvous, you go to YouTube and type Kerbal rendezvous, thousands of videos come up. And this is not, I'm not dissing anybody. I mean, I think it's great that people are putting these videos up, but you have so many options, and it's like, especially when I go for outside assistance, I generally am not looking for like the whole thing. I'm looking for one piece of information.
Yeah.
Like I have one specific question that I want answered. And the problem I have, if I type rendezvous and I get, 4,000 results, okay, which one has the one little bit of information that I'm looking for?
Exactly, and it's hard for a YouTube video because they're not really indexed, know, and if you had, there have been people, and we've had read their letters on here that have made Kerbal handbooks or some sort of Kerbal, reference guide. And having something like that in the game where I wouldn't have to leave the game, because there's another thing to be said for immersion.
Oh, yeah.
If I leave the game to go do something, chances are I may not feel like coming back because I already exited the game, or I already tabbed over and I'm looking at that thing. Well,
I'll tell you what, that's where an iPad and a wireless internet connection comes in handy.
Yeah. But I'm not going to recommend that, because then it's like, oh, hey, you need another device in order to use this device, So I don't think that's conducive to trying to keep people in the game. It's like,
I have a feeling this is a conversation we're going to be having a lot for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, well, let's, I'll move on. Our good friend Run Phil Run writes in. And he says, hey, Biff and Nos. And you remember I had asked before, I said, isn't he an intern at SpaceX?
Uh-huh.
Well, it's been a while, but I finally have had time to write in. I've been working as an intern at SpaceX for a few weeks now, and I can honestly say that KSP is a more accurate simulator than I expected. Enough about me. Time for the KSP Wall O text. First, I'd like to chime in on Squad's decision to move KSP into and out of beta. I agree with North Star and NOS for the most part. Alpha is traditionally the phase of development where new features are added and removed, discussed and played around with until the devs feel satisfied. To use a metaphor, Alpha begins with acquiring a block of clay, and over time the devs sculpt away as the game takes shape. Towards the end of Alpha, we may see the fine details being applied, cough cough, new arrow overhaul, reentry, and curbettes. Beta encompasses rebalancing, new textures, bug fixes, and optimization, painting the sculpture. Final release, as NOS and North Star agreed, Squad's announcement that the game is finished. Squad stated that they believe the game satisfies their original design document, but still needs work and will continue to receive updates. Isn't that the definition of beta? I am also very surprised that they are choosing to introduce new features and the Aero overhaul in version 1.0, and especially the spaceplane stability visualizations they plan to roll out. Squad no doubt pays attention to the community's reaction, so we may see official 1.0 release delayed by popular request. Only time will tell. After listening to 8 episodes in a little over a week, I already forgot a ton of stuff I wanted to say. I will leave you with a few short comments on what I remember. I'm happy to see that Squad is integrating essential mods, essential in quotes, in the stock game like enhanced nav ball, fine print, and now lookalikes of near and deadly re-entry. As long as they keep things configurable and moddable, I will be happy. No mod should be, quote, essential. In my opinion, mods are optional changes to the game, like using MechJeb, Kerbal Attachment System, or KW Rocketry. I am very surprised that there hasn't been any mention of including an information window like Kerbal Engineer Redux, or Redo. That's another conversation we're going to continue to have. How do we pronounce that? Next item. A Kerbal Life is awesome. Oh, thank you. Great writing, voice acting, and editing. This segment is something I had wanted to do for a long time, and I'm glad someone like Amy Kay made it happen. Audio letters are great. I agree. I second that one.
Yeah.
It is a great addition to Mission Briefing and really cool to see so many listeners getting involved. Fly safe, Run Phil Run. And just to torment me, there is
I just turned the page and saw it.
there is a PS. And since this song is stuck in my head, I can sing the PS. Are you ready?
Are you going to sing it?
Oh, I'm going to have to.
Oh, yeah, just go and do it.
My lander's gonna break. Mun craters in my face. Explosions in outer space. I have to revert to launch. No shoots till it's too late. No, but it's too late. Try to. God, this song is worse than. Every time I think this song is as bad as it can get, it gets worse. No shoots, but it's too late. Try and land it anyway, way. Funds going down the drain. So I revert to launch. I, revert to launch. And then in parentheses, he says, set to the tune of the Dark Lord's Sweet Serenade. I can't get away from that song.
8 episodes and he remembered that, so.
There's a store. Every time I go into it, that song starts playing. I'm to the point where I don't want to go to that store anymore.
What store?
Target.
Oh.
Every time I go in there, because, I always have to go and look in the entertainment section. I go in there and immediately, because they have a monitor
You
going,
know, the guy
and
actually.
that stupid song starts up.
You know what they say?
And then once it plays, it is in my head for the rest of the week. What do they say?
You'd been saying that they walk among us, and so maybe one of the people that works there plays the game, listens to the podcast, sees you coming in, turns it on.
And they fire off that song.
You made this bed, now you got to sleep in it.
Yes, apparently.
Bill F. writes in with a progress report. I have not tried a return trip from Eve yet. Knowing that a round trip would be difficult, I have only sent a probe to Eve's surface. Kerbals have set foot upon Gilly, and Ike for that matter, but many crash ships litter Duna's surface. In fact, I have 2 Kerbals awaiting rescue on the surface of Duna as I write this. Likewise, Lathe has been a problem for me, though in the case of Lathe, it is landing targeting that has been a problem. Twice I have aborted to orbit on landing attempts for Lathe when I realize that my landing approach is long, and I will wind up in the ocean. I have temporarily abandoned Duna in favor of Lathe, and my current mission is awaiting the arrival of additional fuel before attempting a deorbit burn. That sounds rough.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I can't help you on that one, and I don't even know if you can.
Well, I wrote him back and I said, Lathe, to me, is like the second most difficult planet in the moon. It's the second most difficult moon in the game. Eve is the most difficult. Okay, let me rephrase. Eve is the most difficult planet. Lathe is the most difficult moon. And they both share a lot of similarities in their difficulties. One of the big difficulties with Lathe is the land masses are so small.
Mm-hmm.
And since the atmosphere is so thick, when you're trying to deorbit and hit these little teeny tiny targets, the little land masses, that's tough.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that he went from Eve to Lathe. It's like, really?
You know, after you leave a relationship, you're bound to go towards something just like it. You know, you got to give it some time before you hit the rebound.
Well, ironically, again, I don't try and organize these letters in any kind of order. I just kind of...
I can tell they're all over the floor.
Yeah, I just print them as they come in. The very next letter addresses this issue. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
This is from Maloon's Oreo. It's really easy to get to Eve and back. Here's how. Planes. Build a space plane instead of a lander. Land the plane, mess around, get back in, hope you like ladders, fly to orbit, get into your return ship, and fly on home.
You know,
Maloon's Oreo.
Because you're fighting gravity, but it's going to take a lot of fuel and it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But you have an air intake, and there's air, sort of.
Well, and also, the from what little I've messed around with planes, the fuel on a plane lasts a lot longer.
Yeah.
And also, since you're flying horizontally and you're increasing your altitude, that, to me, you're working kind of with the thickness of the atmosphere instead of trying to push against it vertically.
Yeah.
When I read this letter, this was a hand to the forehead moment. Because I have given so much thought to getting back off of Eve and running into so much difficulty. And then then literally one word, planes. And I went, why did I not? The nice thing about this, do you know how I've told you that I've really had no interest in planes in the game?
I think you do now.
Yeah, now I do. Now I'm thinking in terms of I want to build something I can land on Eve and fly back off of it.
And you can fly on Eve for a while till you find a piece of landmass that is the size that you want to land on it.
Eve, for the most part, Eve has like one really big continent that I always shoot for. And it's like half of Eve is fairly easy to land on, and then the other half is a lot of little teeny tiny islands. Lathe is just basically a whole bunch of teeny tiny islands.
Yeah.
The difference is the atmosphere on Lathe, as thick as it is not nearly as tough as the atmosphere on Eve. So it's kind of like, there's your balance. It's hard to argue which is harder, simply because one is easier in one respect, that the other one is harder, and then the other one is easier in the respect that the first one is harder. So anyway, you have the next letter
from Ron K. I was noticing that there was a discussion in the career version of the game of making enough money to upgrade buildings without falling into a routine of parts testing and other boring missions. I realized earlier this week that I had several contracts to explore Jool and its moons, each awarded more than $500,000, so I ended up creating a rocket with all the science gadgets, as well as 4 probes, again with all the science gadgets. I was able to get this probe carrier launched and used atomic engines for its deep space propulsion. It reached Jool, and I aerobraked to establish an orbit. Then it was simply a case of working out encounters from one moon to the next, dropping a probe at each one. Each probe was equipped with an ion engine, which were strong enough to establish an orbit, and even allowed me to land on Pole and Bop. I think you can land on Tylo and Vol the same way, but haven't checked yet. However, this mission cost around $300,000, but earned approximately $1.5 million. With the Explorer contracts for Jool, Tylo, Vol, Pole, and Bop, you could earn up to $2.5 million with the same cost. I think Lathe would require a separate mission as it has an atmosphere which the other four moons do not. Anyway, I was rather proud of myself for turning 3 missions into 1 and reaping the benefits. Thanks, and keep your hand on the throttle and your finger on the spacebar. Ron K.
Since you're a career player...
There's a crazy amount of money.
I mean...
That's ridiculous.
Well, I think that's the first letter where I've seen someone say career and then use million.
Yeah, because most of the things we've heard about from people that are doing career mode, they're just starting it and they're struggling to get a couple 100,000.
It's almost like nickel and dime.
I don't know the size of his craft, but in order for him to build a craft that I think would be big enough, he had to at least upgrade 2 or 3 different parts of his space center, which is already a couple 100,000. So, and to take all those contracts, unless he's doing them 2 at a time, he had to upgrade his administration building, and so he's doing well.
Wow. Well, we were talking about Eve just now.
Just rich Uncle Ron.
My rich Uncle Ron. We were talking about Eve and the difficulty involved with it. Again, I don't structure these letters. I don't arrange them in any order. So it's funny how questions get raised and then get answered.
Yeah.
Just by the order. And guess what? We have a letter from Crater. And this is a great letter. It's lengthy, but it's a great letter. Listen to this. Biff, I think I know why you're struggling so much with Eve. It's not just that it is so difficult, which it is, but also that you haven't really yet had an epiphany of just how difficult it is. Eve is hard, really hard. Really, really, words can't do it justice. Let's just use numbers instead. Getting into orbit around Kerbin takes about 4,500 delta V. Escaping Kerbin, transferring to Eve, and getting into a low orbit takes something like 2,400 more. With plenty of parachutes, you can get down onto Eve with just a couple of hundred for a D-orbit burn. That's about 7,000 delta V so far. Getting back into Eve orbit from sea level takes about 12,000 delta V. That's 12,000. Pronounced with a big old ow right in the middle. Thou, ow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's close to 3 times what it takes to get into low Kerbin orbit, or almost twice as much again as your launch and transfer stages had. If you can land on a mountain on Eve, you can cut thousands off of that figure, but it still has that big ow in the middle of the number. Basically, where your lander could get into Kerbin orbit and have some fuel to spare, if you want an Eve lander, you need to test it by getting into orbit of Kerbin, landing back on Kerbin, and then taking off into orbit again and still have plenty of fuel left. You remember, I was testing Eve landers on Kerbin and then going to Eve, and they weren't working. Mm-hmm. Basically, what he's saying is they have to be capable of performing the same maneuver twice and still have fuel left over.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Eve is hard, and still the only place I haven't managed to get back from. On a different note, I have to admit that I'm a little concerned by the announcement that KSP is going into a full release with their next version. I feel that they're close, and that a lot of the people with negative views seem to be judging it based on the bugs and issues with 0.90, and not considering what may change. But while I'll happily accept that they can fix the outstanding bugs, address performance, sort out the aerodynamics model and all that, My big worry is that the other big change needed is a major rebalance of, well, pretty much everything. To me, a rebalance on that scale needs a lot of play testing to be sure it's correct. And I don't know if their experimental team is a large enough pool to draw on for opinions. I just wish they'd do a release candidate first so that the early adopter players could have one last bash on it and chance for feedback and tweaks. Changing subject again. The reason why KSP struggles on your beast of laptop, Biff, when Skyrim doesn't, all comes down to physics simulation. In Skyrim, most of the difficult work is graphics, rendering all those complex objects into a 3D environment. So your graphics card takes a beating, but since it's a gaming card, it copes fine. In KSP, the models are all fairly low poly. The textures aren't too high resolution, and pretty much any graphics card can cope with it. But it simulates physics for all the hundreds of parts. You say that if you get a couple of 400-part ships together, things slow down. Well, Skyrim has a physics engine as well. You'll see it in action when you, say, go into someone's house and find a fruit bowl with berries in it. When you pick one up and the other three suddenly take off into the air, jiggling and wobbling before they finally settle in a very non-berry-like manner, that's the Skyrim's physics engine dealing with 4 whole objects, 3 berries and a bowl. The real bottleneck in KSP is basically CPU. Because of the nature of the game, KSP doesn't really have regions, and you couldn't have, quote, loading messages when you went from place to place. So it has to load all of the textures into memory at startup. This means that you need to have enough memory to run it, but more won't make it faster, and less will just crash unless you uninstall some mods. The graphics are fairly simple by modern standards, so any reasonable GPU can keep up just fine. This is an aside, but one thing I have noticed, he's talking about, you don't get loading messages. One thing I do notice, though, when I'm doing Rendezvous, when I get within, and it's always the same number, whenever I get within 2.1 kilometers of the ship that I'm approaching, there is a momentary freeze because that's the distance at which it seems to render the object itself. It stops being just a yellow circle.
I remember that.
Yeah, so I think there is, I won't call it a loading screen, but there's a slight lag, and it's usually about a second or two. Mm-hmm. But I think what it is I think the game, until you get within 2.1 kilometers of the object, the game just renders it as simply a yellow dot, or I think it's green if you've targeted, but it's a dot basically. It's just a hollow circle. But when you get within 2.1 kilometers, that's when it actually renders the object itself. So there is a bit of a lag. Let's see. Okay. Graphics, fairly simple, blah, blah, blah. CPU, however, is where it all falls down. The version of Unity that KSP is built on is single-threaded. That means that all the physics simulation has to be done on one single core of your CPU. It doesn't matter if you have multi-cores or hyper-threading or even dual processors. Unity forces KSP onto one thread on one core on one socket, and that's what governs the number of parts that it takes to turn orbital ballet into treacle. My machine has 22 gigabytes of RAM, 8 CPU cores, dual NVIDIA graphics cards, and an SSD that it boots and loads KSP from. It still struggles with medium-large space stations. Yeah, that's very similar. I actually have more RAM, but that is very similar to my setup. And yeah, it chugs on mine too. Finally, just wanted to say how much I'm enjoying A Kerbal Life. I am particularly looking forward to the next episode when they try to talk Bob through rendezvousing and docking with Jeb's ship. After all, how hard can it be? It's not like it's rocket science brain surgery. Homer to your mobile. Crater. P.S. Biff, what kind of dog do you have? Because you remember my dog barked in the last episode. Answer to your question, I have a Catahoula leopard dog.
It hunts leopards.
I had never heard, no, actually it's a hog dog. I'm not a hunter by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a dog that was bred for hunting.
Yeah.
It's meant to hunt wild hogs.
Wild hog just happened to be passing by. The dog barks. That's what happened last episode.
Yeah.
We're sorry.
Yeah.
It
was neat. We had yet another co-host.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's my pound hound. I got her from the animal shelter. Anyway, she's my baby.
Yeah, she just wanted to be credited.
She has no idea that she's about 65 pounds, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figure that out every time I come over.
You know what? That dog has crotch radar.
Yeah.
I don't care where I'm sitting, what position I'm in, how I am turned. That dog zeroes in on my crotch and just bam!
Hey, what's up?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? Hey, does this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? Anyway,
okay.
That's my dog voice.
Yeah. Some of the tweets we received this week from Ministar.
Oh, before you move on, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, Crater, awesome letter. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I got off topic on the dog thing, but thank you so much. That was an awesome letter and a lot of good information. I'm sorry. Tweets,
okay,
please go.
Ministar. The performance issues come from Unity's inability to use more than one CPU core for the physics simulation. If I remember correctly, of course, episode 36. Or if I recall correctly. Hashtag episode 36.
You call me old.
If I remember correctly is what I'm used to for IIRC.
Do you remember I said earlier about, acronyms are supposed to be time saving, but instead you go look them up?
Yeah.
He wrote IIRC.
Yeah.
And so I went and looked it up, and then I wrote in parentheses, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, see, I always read it as if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, the when I Googled, it said recall, but I guess remember, same thing.
Regarding KSP's pending update 1.0, Skyzar tweets, I'll believe it's out of beta when I get an instruction manual.
And hail Skyzar!
In response, Brian81584 says, wouldn't that be an intro to physics book?
Yeah.
Mittenpo says, I say that KSP should go from alpha to omega. So next update should be KSP update 0.101, Deadly Gamma. Republic of Stars tweets, Biff, you were right. The first time with rendezvous and docking was hard, but I did it. And included a screenshot.
Yay. And I tweeted the screenshot. Yay.
Yay.
If you go on the KSP subreddits, or if you look at tweets or anything, inevitably somebody is tweeting about their first rendezvous. That is like, I mean, in this game, that's the achievement. Mm-hmm. That's the achievement that everybody, I think, is most proud of at first. So, anyway, well, congratulations, and thanks to everybody who tweeted in and everybody who wrote in. At this point in the podcast, we would typically have a Kerbal Life, but we have a monster of an After the Credits segment coming up.
Yeah.
And given that we're going to be talking about Apollo 14, and if we keep going the way we're going, today's podcast is going to be longer than the actual Apollo 14 mission itself. So we're going to skip a Kerbal Life this week. But I do encourage you, stick around for our episode After the Credits on Apollo 14. It was an absolutely fascinating mission. And I think you will enjoy this. So we want to thank everybody, obviously, who listens and downloads the podcasts and leaves comments on iTunes and all that, and also our regular contributors, including Amy Kay for A Kerbal Life. Even though we're not using it this week,
yeah, you'll get it next week.
She puts a lot of work into it, and we do appreciate it.
We also want to appreciate everyone who sent us letters or tweets, and the subreddit moderators for Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Academy. And
it's funny, the thanks are assuming that we did an episode of A Kerbal Life. So anyway, music for A Kerbal Life,
when you hear it,
if you would normally hear it, is provided by Lee Rosevere. Find him at freemusicarchive.org/Lee_Rosevere.
Music for our episodes comes to us from Professor Soap. You can look
the music you can actually hear right now.
You can look for him on Facebook at facebook.com/Professor Soap or profsoap.com.
And a big thank you to Ascalon, who posts episodes of Kerbalcast to YouTube each week, so we can get the closed captioning. Even when we posted early, he was Johnny on the spot.
Yeah, he's right on it.
He had it right on there. As always, you can contact us very easily, and we do appreciate any contact. And we absolutely love audio letters. So if you want to, we love text letters, but audio letters are fun too.
Yeah.
Send it to kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to do an audio letter, just send it to us as an MP3.
You can also follow us on Twitter at Kerbalcast.
And you can subscribe to us on iTunes. And all episodes of Kerbalcast can be found at kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com.
You can also find us on Steam as Biff Aldrin and Nostromo.
And apparently you can watch us too.
Yeah.
That's,
So no moment is safe.
that's right. That's right. Remember, $50 and I put the pants on. One thing that we talked about earlier, we got a letter several episodes back. Somebody had written in and asked if there was any way that they could contribute and help us defray some of the cost of Kerbalcast. And we said that we were working on something. We have finally, just to show you how fast we do things.
Yeah, really churn it out here.
Yeah, boy, we're just knocking them right out. We have finally set up an account that if you would like to help contribute to us and help us cover some of the costs, it's Patreon.com. And I have to give Nos a lot of credit here. He's the one who actually set up the account for us. We have just launched it. It's gone live. There is a URL. However, it's one of those URLs that is not audio friendly.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is go to Patreon.com and just simply search for Kerbalcast.
Yeah. So, really, the way I think about it is I've donated to people's Patreons before, and you can do it as monthly donations, or you can do like one time.
Yep.
They also have a goal or like reward levels, so you can put in a certain amount and get something for that.
You know what? They can reward us when we're really good, and then they can punish us when we really suck.
There's a way to take money out of our account.
Yeah.
I want it back.
I want my money back.
So, if you appreciate any of the podcasts you've heard up to this point, and you want to show your appreciation, you can go ahead and pledge money through Patreon.
Yeah, and thank you very much. Again, it's Patreon.com. Just search Kerbalcast.
Yeah.
Stick around. We do have After the Credits coming up, and it is Apollo 14. The anniversary of that is this week. As always, I would like to say a big thank you to our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
I can't do this without you, man. I have not, I don't think I've ever said that in the past, but I just want to say, you're a big reason why this podcast is what it is. And you get the blame too.
Yeah, with that Patreon, I can hold it ransom now. If I don't see this much money in the Patreon account, I'm out of here.
That's right. And I am, as always, your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin. You have something you want to say.
Oh, I was going to say it. I was going to say I almost have it memorized now.
What?
The LMP CMP thing.
Okay, go ahead. I want to hear it. Come on, put that extra effort in.
And we want to say a thank you to our LMP, our Lunar Module Pilot.
Who is he?
Biff Aldrin.
Biff Aldrin.
So we want to say until next time, unless you're staying for after the credits.
That's right.
Happy Kerbaling.
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
This week marks the anniversary of the flight of Apollo 14, a trip to the moon that could be called the comeback mission for a couple of reasons. First, and most obviously, Apollo 14 was NASA's follow-up to the, quote, successful failure of Apollo 13. The space program already had its share of critics waiting to carve up the budget for the moon missions. The near tragedy of Apollo 13 helped to sharpen their knives. Going to the moon was expensive, redundant. I mean, come on, we beat the Russians, right? Why go back? And Apollo 13 showed just how dangerous it could be. NASA needed a PR win like the old days. And who better to give them that than America's first astronaut, Alan Shepard? And this is the second reason why Apollo 14 could be called the comeback mission.
Alan Shepard was not the first man in space. That honor went to cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin on April 12, 1961. But Alan Shepard was the first American into space, and during the time of the Cold War, that distinction made all the difference. On May 5, 1961, just a few weeks after Gagarin's flight, Shepard made a quick suborbital hop that lasted just over 15 minutes. As one of the Mercury 7 astronauts, Shepard was already famous when his ship, Freedom 7, left the launch pad. But when he splashed down 302 miles later, Alan Shepard was a national hero. At least for a while. A few months later, John Glenn orbited the Earth 3 times in his capsule Friendship 7. Shepard's accomplishment suddenly didn't seem so important to the public. What was a suborbital flight that barely made it into space compared to an orbital mission? And then the unthinkable happened. America's first astronaut was grounded.
It's called Meniere's disease, a buildup of fluid pressure in the inner ear that causes sudden attacks of vertigo, dizziness, and nausea. The first time it happened, Alan Shepard didn't think anything of it. Maybe he was getting the flu. But then it happened again a few days later, and again a few days after that. Shepard was the designated command pilot for the first Gemini mission. He had no choice but to report his condition to the NASA doctors. Once diagnosed, he was pulled from active status. He could still fly airplanes, but only with a co-pilot, and going into space was out of the question. Shepard agreed to stay with NASA and take over the astronaut office. If he couldn't fly with the astronauts, he could certainly boss them around. And that's the way things stayed for 8 long years.
Alan Shepard never gave up on his dream of going back into space. When Tom Stafford, another astronaut, told him about a newly developed corrective surgery for Meniere's disease, Shepard immediately opted for the procedure, although he told no one about it at NASA. The surgery was a success, and Shepard was fully reinstated to flight status. He immediately requested command of the next mission, Apollo 13. NASA said no. Shepard needed more time to train. He would instead be given Apollo 14 along with astronauts Stu Roosa and Ed Mitchell. They trained for 19 months, which is longer than any Apollo crew before them. On January 31st, 1971, they were ready.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff with Apollo 14. 3 minutes past the hour. The tower is clear.
Houston is controlling.
Have good thrust on all 5.
16 seconds. Pitch and roll program started. 14 maneuvering to a proper flight course.
Okay, Houston, roll complete.
Roger, roll complete.
Shepard reports roll program completed. Pitch profile still in progress. Cabin pressure coming down, adjusting from sea level to a space environment. Status check in mission control, coming up all greens on the flight director's console.
In Houston, everything looks good here on the ground.
And everything looked good in space, too. Aboard Apollo 14, the 3 astronauts were on their way to Frau Morrow, the region originally selected for the Apollo 13 mission.
Good on.
Roger.
And separation.
Roger.
Ignition on 5.
Had staging, the Shepard crew now riding on 5 good second stage engines.
On 5 engines.
Roger, we confirm good thrust on all 5.
But even though it was a near-perfect launch despite a few delays, the crew of Apollo 14 was about to be faced with a problem that could have ended the mission for good.
It happened just after TLI, or translunar injection, a maneuver that required the 3rd stage of the Saturn V rocket, known as the S-4B, to fire a second time and send the spacecraft out of Earth orbit and on its way to the Moon. Once completed, Kitty Hawk, the Command and Service Module, or CSM, would detach from the S-4B and expose Antares, the Lunar Module, or LEM. The CSM would then spin around 180 degrees, dock with the LEM, and gently pull it away from the 3rd stage S-4B.
Houston, we're about to dock.
Roger.
We're probably a foot, 18 inches to 2 foot out now.
Roger.
And we docked.
Roger, we can see the slight oscillation.
Ed Mitchell reporting that Apollo 14 command module, Kitty Hawk, has docked with the lunar module.
Or so they thought, at least until the LEM and Terry started to drift away.
Okay, Houston, we've hit it twice, and sure looks like we're closing fast enough. I'm going to back out here and try it again.
And 3 minutes later...
Okay, Houston, we backed out a little bit, and that last time I hit it pretty good, and we're just not getting the capture latches in there.
Roger, we suggest you verify, if you haven't already, the docking probe circuit breakers on panel 8.
That's verified.
And standby 1. And Stu, we suggest you go to extend on the docking probe, extend retract switch, and check the talkbacks gray.
Okay, we did that when we extended, but we'll sure do it again.
And then back to retract.
Okay, we get both gray in the extend position.
Roger.
And we go retract in both gray.
14 Houston, one other suggestion, go to panel 229 and check the EPS group 4 circuit breaker.
Okay. Okay, they're both in.
Roger.
If the guys in Mission Control sound a little confused, it's because docking the CSM and the lunar module isn't supposed to be this difficult. Both are traveling along the same path at about the same speed. The probe on the tip of the command module and the docking port on the top of the limb were designed to easily slide together and lock. There was even a target on the lunar module for the CSM pilot to aim for. The problem was that if the two ships couldn't be docked, the astronauts couldn't get from the command module into the lander without putting on pressure suits and doing an EVA. NASA wasn't about to send the two ships to the moon separately. In other words, no dock, no moonwalk.
14 Houston, we're about out of ideas here. Suggest you verify you got it to switch back and retract, and then give it another try at docking.
Okay.
In case it isn't obvious, what you're hearing has been heavily edited down from the original audio. Mostly what's been taken out are the very long pauses and also the redundant call and response confirmations. Despite the edits, you've probably got a good sense of just how much time is being spent on this problem. Even so, you may be surprised to learn that almost an hour and a half has gone by since the first failed attempt at docking.
We got one more idea down here before doing any hard suit work, and let me throw it out at you, and you can come back with your impressions. We're thinking of attempting to dock actually without the aid of the probe, which requires some pretty fine alignment. We're thinking that maybe you could go ahead and go through a normal plus X and put the probe in a drogue. Now, if you get one latch, we feel we'll be fat and we can get them all. It sure is worth a chance or worth a try before we do any hard suit work.
Hey, Houston, we're on our way in now, and we're going to try the plus X until it's, after initial contact, try the plus X until it's settled down for perhaps a second or two, and then go through the retract cycle at that time.
Roger.
We got some, Houston. I believe we got a hard dock, Houston.
Standing.
Notice no response for perhaps 2 to 3 seconds after initiating prime retract 1. We then got barber pole on both, went gray on both at the hard dock.
Roger, Al, that's great. Super job, Stu.
Thank you. It didn't even wiggle when he hit it.
Well, there may not have been a wiggle on the spacecraft when they finally hard docked, but I suspect there was some dancing back at Mission Control. And I would love to say that this was the only major technical problem faced by Apollo 14. But if you've seen the HBO miniseries From the Earth to the Moon, you know that the worst was yet to come.
Even though Apollo 14 was the fifth manned spacecraft to orbit the moon, it was the first to use the main engine on the CSM to park the ship in a low perigee descent orbit of 50,000 feet above the lunar surface. This was more fuel efficient for the LEM since it had both a shorter descent and ascent stage to cover. But that's assuming the lander would ever reach the surface. Shortly after undocking from Kitty Hawk, astronauts Alan Shepard and Ed Mitchell ran into a serious problem on board the Antares.
The computer on board the lunar module was showing that the abort switch had been enabled, meaning that it could be triggered, either intentionally by the astronauts or accidentally by the computer. In order to understand why this was a concern, you first have to understand what happens during the abort process itself. First, the descent stage engine on the lunar module would immediately shut down and the ascent engine would fire. At the same time, a series of explosive bolts would be ignited to not only separate the descent stage from the ascent stage, but to launch a guillotine blade that would chop the umbilical, linking the wiring together between the two stages.
The abort procedure was estimated to take about 2 to 4 seconds. During this time, even though both stages were separated, they would continue to fall towards the surface until the ascent engine generated enough thrust to propel the astronauts back into orbit. If the abort were initiated well above the lunar surface, the ascent stage would most likely have plenty of time to ignite and get clear of the descent stage. But if the abort procedure happened when the LEM was at a lower altitude, then the odds worsened considerably.
Once the descent stage was cut loose, it essentially became a falling bomb. If an abort was triggered at or below 100 feet above the lunar surface, approximately 20 seconds before landing, NASA estimated that the descent stage wouldn't hit with enough force to explode. But if the abort happened just a few seconds earlier, say 40 to 45 seconds before landing, then the descent stage would build up enough speed to rupture the fuel tanks on impact. The resulting explosion would throw gases and limb fragments in all directions at several thousand feet per second. If that happened, the escaping astronauts would be struck by the blast wave within a tenth of a second, either destroying or crippling the ascent stage. As they said in From the Earth to the Moon,
"We get that during the descent, this turns into a bad day."
The problem for mission control was time. As long as the abort switch was enabled, or in NASA terminology, the switch was closed, there was a danger that the sequence could be triggered. Also, the limb was rapidly approaching loss of signal, or LOS, as it went around the far side of the moon.
Antares, Houston, what we're looking at there is the abort bit, and it looks set, and we'd like to proceed with the following to reset it.
Okay, give me the words.
Okay, we need to stop push button push, and the next thing is the abort push button depress, and wait on that one.
Okay, standing by on that one.
Okay, I meant you can go ahead and press the abort button, Ed, but stand by for our word on a reset.
Okay, it's set.
Okay, stand by. Antares, Houston, you can reset the abort push button.
Okay, it's reset.
Okay, you can reset the stop button. You can reset the stop button now, Ed, and press on with the P-52.
At first, it looked like the reset procedure had solved the problem, but that relief was short-lived.
Okay, and Antares, we're showing the abort bit set again, and we're working on a procedure to reset it, and also another procedure to lock it out after starting PDI.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you.
A quick word on terminology. You keep hearing them say the abort bit. What that means is that a single bit in the memory of the onboard computer was incorrectly set. In other words, open or closed, on or off.
Ed, could you tap on the panel around the abort push button and see if we can shake something loose?
Yeah, Houston, it just changed while I was tapping there.
You sure tapped nicely.
I'm pretty good at that.
Okay, Antares, we'd like to kind of sit here a minute and watch it.
Okay.
Since tapping on the panel around the abort button seemed to help, at least temporarily, Mission Control felt that something might be floating around loose back there. If that was the case, then a solution had to be found to lock out the abort switch entirely. As the software engineers raced to find a solution, Shepard and Mitchell continued to work through the landing checklist.
Okay, I have cone craters, triplet, and doublet. They all look just like they're supposed to.
Very good, Al.
And star and sunrise. Right down there, right straight there. Yep, got 'em, yep, sure do. I think we'll know it next time, Fredo. There they were right below us, big as life.
Okay, Antares, Houston.
Go ahead.
Okay, Ed, that bit just showed up again. Wonder if you can try tapping the panel there by the abort switch again.
Okay. Anything yet, Fredo?
Okay, Ed, you did good work again.
Houston and Terry.
Antares, Houston, go ahead.
Hello, Tom. You think we're going to come up with something on this problem with the abort button?
Roger, we're working it right now, and also MIT's working it. Needless to say, we're busy here, but we think we got a solution.
Good enough. Is it something like a solder ball, or?
Well, we don't know yet. We got about 19 minutes to loss of signal here, and so we'll have something to you before then, and we'll have some time to pick it up on the other side.
And that's what happened. Before loss of signal, the astronauts were given a temporary fix to keep the abort switch from engaging. By the time they emerged from the lunar far side and regained radio contact with Houston, also known as AOS, acquisition of signal, the software engineers had new programming instructions.
The procedure is verb 25, noun 7, enter. 105, enter. 400, enter. 0, enter.
Okay, I read back. Verb 25, noun 07, enter. 05, enter. Is it 4,000, enter? 0, enter.
Okay, Ed, it's verb 25, noun 7, enter. Then 105, enter. 400, 400, enter. 0, enter.
Okay, verb 25, noun 07, enter. 105, enter. 400, enter. 0, enter. And when do I do this?
Okay, you to do this as soon as you can after ignition. We're trying to get this in before there's any chance of the bit getting set in this interval.
Roger, we understand. Sounds like you all have been busy down there.
That was an understatement, to say the least. To solve the abort problem, the software engineers decided they would have to trick the computer into ignoring the switch altogether.
Antares, Houston, we got some more procedures to pump up that are going to alter what you already copied. Ed might ought to get out something a little bigger than the DIPS card to write this down.
Now that the new instructions had been relayed to the astronauts and entered manually, the next step was to ignite the LIM engine. Once at full throttle, Ed Mitchell would have to punch in another set of commands, reset the abort switch, then return the computer to guidance mode. Following that, Alan Shepard was to set the thrust controller to minimum to let the guidance routine take over the engine.
Antares is standing by for a PDI go.
And Antares, Houston, your go for Frau-Maro.
The solution worked. The Apollo 14 lunar module landed at Frau-Maro in one of the most accurate touchdowns of any of the moon missions. Alan Shepard, America's first astronaut, the man who spent nearly a decade grounded, was now standing on the surface of the moon.
It's been a long way, but we're here.
I want to close with a quote. Anyone who has listened to Kerbalcast before knows that the book A Man on the Moon by Andrew Chaikin is one of my favorites, and I refer to it often. So what better way to end this look at the Apollo 14 mission? Quote, finding his balance, Shepard made his way to one side of Antares and cast his gaze to the east. There, beneath the solar glare, was the broad rise of Cone Crater. Tomorrow, he and Mitchell would climb to its summit in search of geologic treasure. He told Houston the way would be clear. He could see that even from where he stood. Shepard realized that finally everything was going well. After all they had been through, he felt sure he would have his full-up mission. He took a moment to lean back so that he could look up into the black sky, and near the zenith, his gaze found a small and lovely blue and white crescent. Suddenly, he was overcome by the beauty of the earth, by the undeniable majesty of Frau-Maro, and by his own feeling of relief. Standing on the gray dust of this promised land, Shepard cried. For several long moments, while the checklist went unnoticed, his tears flowed in spite of himself. So what do you think?
I think that it was, first of all, most of this was written by you, like most of the things that we said. So I really want to salute like how much effort you put into it.
Can I say obsessively written by me?
Yeah. And just how well it was attributed, like everything it went through in From the Earth to the Moon. Mm-hmm. You know, it was really well put there. And then in that last quote, I mean, you're talking about a guy who has been in it for a long time.
Right.
You know, he didn't just finish flight school and he hopped in. He did it. He was the first. Then he was kind of outshone and kind of forgotten. They even show that in From the Earth to the Moon when he's going into the operating table.
Yeah.
Don't you know that's the first astronaut? It's like, I think I'd recognize John Glenn when I saw him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he finally gets to make it there. He gets to do like pretty much the biggest space thing that we'd done up until recently, whenever we started interacting with Mars.
There is a throwaway line in The Right Stuff. And if you don't know your space history, which I didn't when I first saw the movie, I didn't know it like I know it now.
Yeah.
There's a throwaway line in The Right Stuff. It's during the Astrodome sequence. Alan Shepard says to his wife, he says, "I'm going to the moon someday. Mm-hmm. Believe me, I'm going to the moon someday." He says something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I didn't catch at the time that of the original 7, Alan Shepard was the only one to actually go to the moon.
Mm-hmm. And he was in that space program. And he was going to be in the Gemini missions. Mm-hmm. So he's been working on Rendezvous.
Yeah.
And so it was almost, I don't know, and I can't say for sure, we have no way of knowing if he was involved with those. Like, let's say he never,
he was right up to training for the first Gemini mission.
Yeah.
And he got pulled.
Yeah. So let's say he did, and he never had the disease and it never interfered. If he would have gone on the Apollo ones, or if that would have been somebody else.
Yeah, that's the point they made in From the Earth to the Moon. Was that, the reason Gus Grissom was sitting in Apollo 1 was, I won't say the reason, but there was astronaut seniority, And NASA at that time wasn't about to put John Glenn back in orbit because they were just scared to death. The fact that Alan Shepard was grounded, Gus Grissom was the next logical candidate. And that's part of why he was sitting in Apollo 1. And then he lobbied actively for Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, not enough time.
Yeah. And
so, I mean,
then what happened to Apollo 13? So,
I mean, you talk about two. I mean, he was the first American in space, an incredible stroke of luck. He was not in Apollo 1 because he was grounded, and he was not given Apollo 13 because they didn't think he had enough time. I mean, most people don't dodge that many bullets in a lifetime.
On top of the reason that he was almost had the chance for 13 and ended up in 14 is because he took a procedure that, if from the Earth to the Moon is accurate, had a 60% chance of even working.
Yeah. Well, and also the odds were very high that it would destroy. It would either damage or minimize some of his hearing in that ear.
Yeah.
But I mean, Alan Shepard, flying was life.
Yeah.
And to suddenly lose that part of yourself. I mean, he was willing to risk, I can lose hearing in one ear if it means getting back into space.
Yeah, definitely. It was so it's like the amount that he was dedicated to it and the chances that he was willing to take just to get back in it.
Yeah.
It's like he almost really didn't hesitate to it too much. He was like, no, this is what I do.
One thing that really struck me, as I had mentioned before, all of the audio from the Apollo 14, really from all of the missions, is available. You can get all of the ground-to-flight transmissions. I mean, they're all available. Here's the thing. They're not indexed.
Yeah.
So in order to find the sound bites that you heard today, I had to sift through essentially 9 days worth of unedited, unindexed recordings. And the thing that really stood out to me, when I was reading that quote at the very end here from A Man on the Moon, you remember he said, Shepard is standing on the surface of the moon, and, quote, Shepard cried. For several long moments, his tears flowed in spite of himself. And I tried to find, I was thinking, the astronauts weren't the type of people that would freely admit, hey, I was crying.
Yeah.
When I got to that part of the mission audio, I had my headphones on and I had the volume turned all the way up, and I was really listening to hear if I could to catch any hint of that. And the only thing that I found that suggests to me I have an idea at what point that was happening is after Ed Mitchell comes down and they're both walking around on the moon, there's about a 3-minute window in there between Alan Shepard saying something and then saying something else. And I have a feeling that that's where this was taking place.
Yeah.
But when I was putting this together, a lot of the dialogue that you hear in like The Right Stuff and Apollo 13 and Earth to the Moon, it's word for word. But the inflections are different. Whereas actors are going to give it a dramatic read, they're going to punch it and put some drama in it.
Yeah.
The astronauts who, test pilots, a lot of what they say comes across as very unemotional. And so you get used to the inflections from the dramatized versions, and then you go to the actual real audio.
Yeah.
And it's not what it doesn't have the same punch. And it's because these guys are, they're heading towards the surface of the moon at thousands of miles an hour, and they're about to explode. And the guys are like, yeah, we might be having a little problem here.
Yeah, I mean,
they're very calm.
It needs to be kind of cool under pressure kind of people, and they can't be like overly dramatic or expressive because things like that can sometimes get in the way of clear and succinct communication.
Yeah, I mean, they're very calm. If you do any research on this, and I've done a lot recently. Going back and watching that episode of From the Earth to the Moon, there are so many details that if you don't know to look for them, you miss them. But it's amazing how much detail is in there that is just in there. They don't call attention to it. It's just there.
Yeah.
And if you know it's there, you see it. But there are so many things that are just, it's like, and they do mention it, but it's it's fairly covered by the music, so you might not necessarily get it. But for example, the lunar module Antares landed with one of its foot pads in a depression. Well, if you watch the show, there it is sitting with one of its foot pads in a depression.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he mentions, we're at a bit of an angle because we landed on a descent, on a bit of a slope.
Yeah.
But there's that foot pad in the depression.
Yeah, like dug in more than the others.
At one point, and they really had to dig to get this out. They were having audio problems, transmission problems. So there was a great deal of static and noise. When they were coming down, Alan Shepard, as he was looking out the window and he was seeing all the landmarks and everything, he remarked to himself, he just said kind of offhandedly, he said, "Fat as a goose,"
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of a thumbs up, all engines are firing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, he just to himself, we're coming down fat as a goose. And you could barely pull that out of the static.
Uh-huh.
But it's in the book and it's in the miniseries.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that remark.
Yeah. There's just little things in there. There are some differences, however, and that I also thought was interesting as well. For example, with the abort problem, do you remember after they've gone through and they've cleared the problem and they think they've solved the problem, Alan Shepard says, "Antares standing by for PDI go." And then there's a pause, and he says again, "Antares standing by for PDI go." And then there's another pause, and then he says, "Antares standing by."
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you heard in the mission audio, he only said it once, "Antares standing by for PDI go." There was a pause, and then they said, "Your go for Frau Morrow."
So it's trying to increase the.
Yeah, they drug out the drama
mm-hmm.
by having him repeat it twice. He doesn't repeat it.
Which I will say, for somebody who is a just straight up fan of space exploration, science, like somebody who is an avid, somebody who avidly pays attention to these things, it wouldn't make that much of a difference.
Right.
But to keep somebody who isn't interested, they have to add a little bit of that here and there.
The other thing that I noticed in the miniseries again, when the abort switch first enables, and they notice it at Mission Control, they radio up to Antares and they say, "We see that the abort switch is enabled." And on Antares, they basically say, "Yeah, we see that too." Well, in the miniseries, they say, "Well, now neither of you boys have your thumbs on the abort switch." And the actor playing Alan Shepard, Ted Levine, says, almost irritated, "That's a negative, Houston." Well, I couldn't find that in the mission audio. As far as I can tell, that little exchange there did not happen. But once again, it was in there for drama.
Yeah.
So it's the little differences that I think's interesting. But I went ahead. I chose to stop the Apollo 14 with Alan Shepard standing on the moon because that's kind of the end of his story. Obviously a lot more happened from that point on. But again, the length of this thing was getting so long.
Uh-huh. Which, I mean, that's what was very distinct about his story and how it applied to what happened on the mission.
Yeah.
Everything after that, it was like, they even did that in From the Earth to the Moon. They sort of montaged it where they were fading over them, running around, collecting samples, and then hitting the golf ball.
This was... I talked about this several episodes back. I had landed on a moon, and I had landed close to a gigantic crater. And my intention was I was going to land, I was going to get out, I was going to walk up and look over the edge of that crater. And I mentioned at the time that there was an Apollo mission where they were trying to get to the rim of a crater, and they kept going up over these little rises, and there would be more rise in front of them. And I couldn't remember to save my life, but it was Apollo 14. Cone Crater had been created by an impact. It was a huge, or is, I should say.
Yeah.
It's a huge impact crater. And part of what they were supposed to do was they were supposed to walk to the rim of Cone Crater. And the reason being was the geologists felt that the oldest rocks that had been thrown up from the impact would all be right there along the ridge. they felt that that's where they would find the oldest rocks yet collected from the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, I mean, they knew the topography very well. They knew they knew the layout, but they knew it from a top-down perspective.
Yeah.
When they were ground level, all of a sudden, all those depressions and all the little landmarks that they were used to weren't there, or not the way that they were used to seeing them. And so they kept going and going, and they kept going over the next rise, over the next rise. Now, they finally figured out that they got within 65 feet of the crater's rim.
Oh, wow.
But they didn't know it. If
Yeah.
they had just gone 65 more feet, they would have actually been looking down. But at that point, both of the men were exhausted. Their heart rates had been so elevated, they were overheating. They basically said, "You guys are out of time. You've got to come back." The Men on the Moon book points out that, ironically enough, when Mission Control told them you need to turn around and head back, the direction that they went in actually took them closer to the rim of the crater than they had been going on purpose. When they started back, they actually started back towards the rim of the crater without realizing it. It wasn't until later, when they were analyzing the photographs that had been taken, that's when they realized these guys are just a stone's throw from the rim.
Yeah.
So it was initially considered a mission failure that they didn't get to the rim, but then once they went back, they went, yeah, they were there.
Yeah.
They were there all along. But that shows you the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cone crater was part of the mission, and also he snuck a golf club, or not an entire club, the head of a club, and he actually hit a golf ball, and and there it went way off into the distance.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I thought that was a good place to end it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because otherwise, we'd probably still be talking about it.
9 days later.
9 days later, we'd still be talking about it. Anyway, so, well, I guess that wraps it up for After the Credits. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, very good. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that, and we will see you again next week.
I walked over the moon and found me some important to know. You left me here waiting. You were busy taking the world on. You never took my countdown serious. I walked